football. We are back. It is the MGN football tailgate report for 2022. Nate, Chandler, hopefully you know us by this point in time. And man, CT, we're back. Are you ready for this season to get underway? I think I know the answer.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can't wait. It's always hard to believe. It always sneaks up on me. It seems like, we know it's coming. We talk about it.
Yeah.
Of course, I know Nate's got the scheduling all figured out, but he's, it's close now. It feels like it's really here. The week of now, as we're Monday here, so definitely excited for another high school football season, really just football in general, for sure.
Exactly. So we got plenty to get to today. We've got about a 20-minute interview with Grandville head coach Eric STIEGEL. Just went position group by position group as he can do so well, and just went over everything to help give us a little bit of that insight of what the Bulldogs are going to look like. We'll talk about Grandville this season, and then we'll get into some different rankings. We're going to rank our predictions 1 through 8 for the OK Red Conference, because that's where we, of course, primarily will spend our time covering this year. We then also are going to get a little bit into our first edition of the OK Power 6, which is something from last year where we rank our top team in each of the OK sub-conferences. The first one of the year is always a little bit more of a just a preseason prediction sort of thing. We'll get into some preseason awards as well, and I think that'll do it. It's a good show as always. We can get into, first off, talking about 2022 here on MGN. Of course, a little bit different setup here for the Tailgate Report. Got new shirts as part of our rotation as well. You'll break out. You got the hat on as well. We're geared up. New mics. And that's actually one of our first things. Our broadcast this year, we're going to have a crowd mic finally on. We've got some other different features as well that we've updated, but we'll have that, some cool things. This show going to be pretty much the same, which I think is a good thing on the whole, that we're going to be able to operate in pretty much the same capacity. I can't wait. I think it's just going to be a good, solid year, and primarily I'm thrilled about this schedule that we have this year, as you can kind of see behind us, a little bit of a glare, but of course, week 1, Grandville Grand BLANC at historic Atwood Stadium in Flint will be there. 3:15 extended pregame show, partially because we're going to replay this Coach STIEGEL clip that is a nice long one in that pregame show. So extended first game of the year. We'll have plenty to talk about. We're about to talk about some of it as well right now. But non-conference schedule, Chandler, I'll kind of get your thoughts. Obviously, for the Bulldogs, we get Grandville, Grand BLANC, then Pioneer Center, Grandville, local game. I think first 2 weeks, and really we can even say for us it's a non-Grandville game. Then we've changed the schedule. We're going to Hamilton, Holland Christian week 3. 3 games that really stand out to myself.
Yeah, for sure. It seems like we've kind of gotten used to Grandville having some incredible opponents early on in the season, and no different story this year.
Well, yeah.
As you look at the first couple of games, there are some great tests to kind of get a feel for where the Bulldogs are going to be at coming into the new season, and then of course a local rivalry for us, and one very familiar, and excited to see that one, where that's going to be on week 3.
Yeah, no, and that'll be a good one. That's the first time we've done a Hamilton Holland Christian game since we graduated from Hamilton a few years back. I think it is at Holland Christian this year. It's like a double schedule thing. They played there last year, but they're playing there again. And then the meat of the schedule in terms of us, West Ottawa, Grandville. Unfortunately, it's at Grandville. It's not at the new digs at West Ottawa. This week here, I think Jennison's playing week 9 against West Ottawa. If that's a playoff-worthy matchup, I think we might find our way there. Week 5, that's Grandville. Rockford. We're actually going to be off. We have a bit of a schedule. I have a little bit of a scheduling thing that worked out pretty well on Rockford week, so Brock Conkle and company will have that game. Caledonia, Grandville, obviously using Grandville, Jennison, Grand Haven, Grandville. I think obviously CT week 6, Caledonia, Grandville, coming off week 5, Grandville, Rockford. Those are back-to-back weeks in terms of like the season going to be, and then Hudsonville 2, 3 out of 4 weeks there. The whole season for the Bulldogs is going to be determined right in that little clump in the middle of the year.
Yeah, going to be a tough middle part of the schedule for the Bulldogs for sure. When you're looking at the opponents early on that they need to beat in order for this season to really be a success, I think that's the 2 or 3 games you really circle when you're talking about the conference slate. That's the Rockford game, of course, Caledonia, team they've had issues with the last couple seasons, and Hudsonville team that's hungry as well. So those are going to be 3 huge games right in the middle that are going to kind of decide the fate of the season.
Right, and that's the thing about Grandville. It's a tough schedule, especially Grand BLANC, top 5 team in the state with a ton of talent. You'll hear Coach STIEGEL talk about that in just a moment, but you look at the top of that schedule, Grand BLANC tough, and then those 3 or 4 games right in there, rivalry, or local game, Grandville, Jennison, some of the other games that fall in there. Like, it's a tough schedule. Grandville is a very good, very young team this year. I think they're going to surprise people, but man, with that tough of a schedule, we know the new playoff point system too. You got to kind of look at some different things for Grandville in terms of how they're going to be able to position themselves for the playoffs. We'll be there all year long, and this is the week I'm excited about. Week 9, Grandville will be playing at East Kentwood. We'll have another Michigan Sports Radio team on it, and we're going to just be wide open to go wherever. Wherever is best to go. So I'm looking forward to that. great schedule as always. This is one of, I think, my favorite schedules, kind of the way things fall. We've got a couple of game of the week options in there, so that'll be good. All right, I think that's a good intro. We will quickly step aside now, and let's, without further ado, we'll get right into it. We'll take a break, come back, and it'll be Grandville head coach Eric Stiegel in our Coach's Corner segment.
Daniel the deer danced everywhere. He pranced through fields and jigged through rivers. Then he saw it. What a stage! A place no deer had dared dance before. The hood of a brand new car.
Hey, my car!
And the car was covered, thanks to Farmers Insurance. Deer Dance Floor, December 1st, 2014. Talk to a farmer's agent. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Contact the Scott Bates Agency today, 616-531-3441. A proud supporter of MichiganGameNight.com.
I'm Randy Hansen, president of Centennial Securities. I've heard it said that professional coaches measure success in rings, college coaches measure success in championships, and high school coaches measure it in titles. But youth coaches measure success in smiles. At Centennial Securities, we're like the youth coach. Our success is measured by the smiles on the faces of our satisfied clients. If you're a Centennial Securities customer, you know what I mean. If you're not, isn't it about time?
Member SIPC and FINRA.
And welcome back to MGN. It's our Coach's Corner segment. For the first time this year, it's Grandville Bulldogs head coach Eric Stiegel. Coach, how are you, and how excited are you to get this season underway?
Well, really excited, doing well. Excited to be in kind of the game week mode after a couple weeks of fall camp and obviously a summer of conditioning and some camps in there. So we're ready to get going.
Yeah, absolutely. And you go into this season, and there have been a couple of kind of key words that I think you've heard a lot of. I know you and your guys have talked a lot about the speed of this team, but also you can look at a lot of youth, a lot of turnover of this team. What has this camp been like with all those new elements coming together?
Well, you're right. There's definitely a lot of questions, but I think there has been in the past too. We're a program that loves to play a lot of seniors, and we will this year again too. But this year, we have some really, really good sophomores and a freshman that'll be on varsity actually. So it's a little bit unique there, and some of that is because our freshman team was 8-1 last year, had some really good players, and then the freshman that we have up this year is just a really good player, and so we are young and we are fast, and I think that we still have coaches, coming out of the scrimmage. We definitely got some good answers and had some good feedback, but we still know we have room to grow with this team. And that's kind of been our focus is trying to make sure, as much as we're trying to get ready for Grand BLANC and Byron Center and the OK Red this summer, is that we're just trying to develop the skills and making sure we don't overlook anything on that end.
All right, absolutely. So let's, as we've done in the past on some of our season previews, we'll go through some of the position groups now, and we'll start with quarterback. We'll start with the big one, of course. First time in a couple years, we've had a little bit of a talking point here. Is Ian Sanders now gone after essentially 3 years as the starter? Carson Smith is back, 4-year varsity player. I know there's some other interesting talent in that quarterback room as well. Where are things kind of shaking out right now in terms of that position?
Well, Carson Smith's our guy, and he's been on varsity since he started a game because his freshman year in the playoffs because we had a crazy quarterback situation with a couple injuries. And so we were under our fourth quarterback, and he started that playoff game, did well for us. And then, the past couple of years, he's been a starting free safety for us. And last year was a all-conference, all-region free safety, Division I baseball player. One of the best athletes, not only on the team but in the school. So he is a do-it-all guy. He can run, he can throw. He's a leader. We trust him. So he's our guy. Now we also have a really good junior, that we feel really good about, named Cash Ruff, quarterback on our JV team. I mean, 6'4", 205 pounds. One of the best athletes on the team, has made big strides the past couple weeks. So, he's a guy that we're excited about and we have a lot of faith in. So that's kind of our quarterback situation. We're excited. We think we have a really good group there, and that, we're deep there. And again, both those guys can execute the offense really, really well.
All right, and speaking of depth and speaking of this offense, I think it's an annual conversation for us when we talk about the running back group and what that is going to look like this year. Of course, a couple guys returning, Tyson Mann, Mason Albrecht, I think kind of most notably coming into some roles, but a lot of interesting young guys. Also, you mentioned that freshman that has a last name that I think a lot of people may remember from very recently. So tell us about the depth of that running back group and some of the guys we might be seeing in that rotation.
Well, you said it right off the bat. Tyson Mann's a guy. He played only 5 games last year. Had an injury in the middle of the season against Jensen. Came back for the playoffs. Really dynamic. I mean, I think one of not only the best running backs we have, but probably one of the best receivers in the OK Red. And again, we're a team that doesn't split out a lot of guys, but had 19 catches last year in 5 games. So when you think about that. Those are pretty good numbers there. Returned a touchdown on the kickoff. Really good punt returner. Also, again, runs between the tackles really well and is a good blocker. He's kind of a do-it-all guy, and he's kind of the leader of that group because he is a senior who played a lot last year. Mason Albrecht, as you said too, he's going to compete for time at our fullback spot with Carson Kopko. Both those guys have looked really, really well running the trap game. And we saw that in our scrimmage, and we feel really good about both those guys, and we think that we can be pretty dynamic in there at fullback with both of them. Both of them are really fast kids that, if they get a seam, they can take it the distance. So, we feel good there. We go to the other running back spots. We have a junior named Junie Figueroa, who has had a really good offseason, got a lot stronger, a lot bigger, has ran really hard in between the tackles, has good speed too. A guy that we really like. And then we got some younger guys. One of them, we have a sophomore named Easton Sadinsky, dynamic, really good receiver. Probably, similar receiving skills as Tyson. Obviously, a sophomore, doesn't have that experience yet, but is a little bit bigger kid too, and probably a little bit faster. A kid that can make a lot of plays there. And then the freshman we have is Jaden Terry. Yes, one of that's Cam Terry's younger brother. Cam was a 2-time All-State, 3-time All OK Red running back for us. So he's shown flashes, and in all truth, he's the fastest kid on our team. Has been really good, but we also know he's a freshman.
Right.
And, I do think this is the first time I told him, coming out of that scrimmage, which he performed really well. I said, this is the first time that it was, you might not have been the best player on the field by a long shot. When he played in middle school, it was, he could do whatever he wants. And to a degree, he still has some of that ability and is one of the best players on the field, but he's a freshman. And there's a lot to be learned there, both in the physicality of the game, the mental aspect of the game. But when he has the ball in his hands, he's really good. He's a physical blocker, and he's really coachable. So, he's done really well. And then I think rounding out that spot, we have another sophomore named Reed Braverson, who is primarily going to be our middle linebacker on defense, but is a hard-nosed runner, and is going to be a guy that's going to put his nose down, block really well, and get tough yards for us too. So really good group, a group we're excited about, and a group that has depth.
Yeah, absolutely. That's I'm excited to see that group come out. I know, like with Jaden Terry, I've been seeing highlight videos of this kid since he was like 11 years old. So it's interesting now to see him up on the varsity level and what sort of strides, again, just a freshman can make with those other great pieces around as well. Let's kind of transition, and we can touch on a couple of groups together. Let's talk about the trenches in general, offensive line, defensive line. I know there's been some turnover there. A couple guys are help leading the way. How are things looking up front on both sides of the ball?
I think coming out of the scrimmage, we felt that that both those units might be our strength. So that's a good sign for us. We've had, we won't get into who's been injured and this and that, but we've had some nick-ups on our defensive line, this summer. And at some point, like, man, how is this group going to shake out? But, coming out of that scrimmage, the defensive line was probably the strongest group on our defense. Some of those guys are playing two ways now because we got some little nicks here and there, but, we're fine with that. We feel like we get good depth there. The offensive line has played really well, younger than we've been. So there is some growing there. And there's some learning there, but they come off the ball and they want to get after guys, much like what the Grandville offensive line does. I think highlighting that group, the first guy you're going to talk about is Mike Medeiros, who started at right tackle for us on offense as a sophomore last year, 6'3", 295 pounds, moves well, very strong, very athletic. He'll be a guy that's going to, factor on both sides of the ball. He'll play both interior and exterior on the defensive line for us. Powerful guy. I think, the next guy that you probably talk about is our other tackle, and that's Stephen Jackson, who's 6'3", 240. He'll be a junior. He'll be at the left tackle spot, who's kind of been manned by Jackson Buckler for the last 3 years. So, but Stefan's a mauler. He's athletic. He's physical. He's another guy that will factor on both sides of the ball. Looking at the guard spots, you have Landon Hunt, who started a handful of games last year and played a lot last year. And then also he'll be a senior. And then Brett Becker, who's going to be a sophomore. He looks to be our starter at right guard. Both those guys move really well. Both those guys attack blocks when they're pulling, which we do so much with our guards. They trap really well, and they're very athletic. And both those guys will touch the field in defense too. So as much as we're saying we get a lot of two-way guys, it's going to be a rotation over there. We don't think that any of those guys are going to have to play, 80% of the snaps over there because we have some depth. Center spot, J.J. Bugard played some last year. Mason McPherson started every game at center for us last year, but we've kind of elected to put him on the defensive line and try to make that group there, a little bit stronger. Mason also factors in on the offensive line too, but just looking at overall depth, we felt that it'd be good to have a guy, of his size and athleticism, on our defensive line. But so J.J. Bugard is looking like he's going to be our center. AJ DeHaan is a backup kind of in there, and he kind of backs up the guards and the center spot. Like him quite a bit. We got a lot of them here, so I'm giving them to you. We got another kid inside who's a senior, didn't play last year, named Tyson Nesbitt, and he is, not the biggest kid, probably 5'5", 5'6", but he's 185 pounds, and he's energy. He's strong. He's a weight room kid. He gets after it. I think he's going to give the defense, or the offensive lines, not only a different look, but a lot of problems in there. Then we have another sophomore, a big sophomore up, named Carson Kubzak, 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds. He'll be a guy in the interior of a defensive line too that we think is going to be really good and really strong, really physical kid. So we think we have a lot of depth up there. There's some other guys too, named Jesse Villegas coming back, who played a little bit last year at linebacker and defensive end, who's gonna see time there, and a few other guys. And I guess I'll transition a little bit to our tight end group, which we kind of consider those guys linemen. We consider those guys linemen. They practice. They practice with the offensive line 80% of the time at practice. So Braden LaCroix, who played some linebacker last year, will be at tight end on the right side next to Mike. Logan Stockwell will be on the left side. He's a kid who played some backup quarterback for us last year and played some safety, but got a lot bigger, a lot stronger, 6'4", 200 pounds. So he'll fill that spot. Drew Hungerford, who's also kind of a two-way kid, will play some tight end, as well as Aiden Dorn, who also was one of our better defenders last year, coming back. And then Jackson Zook as well will fill out that group. So we think we have a good, talented tight end group that can block, that can catch the ball down the field, and then is athletic in the run game too.
All right, awesome. And we touched on, obviously, kind of up front some of the things on the defensive side. We can round out the rest. I know quite a bit of experience coming back in the secondary, maybe one of the most experienced laden groups that you have in general. You mentioned some of the rotations and new pieces up front. On a whole, how are you kind of looking at that defensive unit this year?
Well, I think again, not to get too much away, we've had some nickups, and so I think that's been some of that. Coming out of the scrimmage, we feel good, and we're really hoping that we get some of these guys that are nicked up back, whether it's for Grand BLANC or later on. But our secondary is, a deep group. You start with Carson Smith, who will play. He's our starting quarterback, but he will play some defense because again, like I said, if he's not the best athlete in the school, he's one of them. He's a Division I baseball player, as a center fielder. He's an all-region, all-conference player as a junior at the secondary. One of the leaders in the OK Red interceptions. He's got to be out there in key downs for us, and he's really intelligent. He's been, this will be his fourth year in varsity. So we expect a lot out of him. Drew Hungerford, at corner last year, kind of came out of nowhere. He was the guy that in the scrimmage, we weren't sure on. And then all of a sudden, hey, this kid had a really good scrimmage. He tackled really well. He's really intelligent, played the ball really well in the air. He'll be a guy that we expect to do big things there too. Some newcomers that we have, in the secondary. I think probably led by Avon Cott. Avon Cott's going to be a junior. Was a really good player on the JV team, both at running back and safety. And he's going to kind of focus his time on the defensive side of the ball. He's also our punter too, so he punts really well. But it is kind of our we call him our boundary safety or our short side of the field safety, but commands the defense really well. Really intelligent, good tackler in the run game, and it's a kid we're excited about. And then Cash Ruff, we mentioned as a backup quarterback. He's 6'4", 200 pounds, can run well, jumps well. He'll be a factor at corner too. And then I think rounding that group out, you look at Easton Sadinsky, who I mentioned on offense a little bit, Terry, who we mentioned on offense, and those three guys are guys that are, going to probably have impacts both ways. And we don't, as a coaching staff, we may not know what yet. We don't really know. Is a guy like Easton Sadinsky or Jaden Terry is his impact going to be more on offense or defense? So we know they're great players, but we have to see what's going to be best for our team. But we feel good about that group back there, and they are an experienced group. We have some talent back there. They're a real coachable group too, so we expect big things out of it. And we haven't got to Grand Blanc yet, but we're going to need great secondary play against Grand Blanc.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you just kind of hinted into it. You look at Grand Blanc, it's a showcase-type game at one of the oldest, or maybe the oldest stadium in the state of Michigan, really unique place to play at Atwood Stadium, and a team that is as talented as any in the state. Rockford obviously knows a lot about that from how their season ended to Grand Blanc last year. Tell us a little bit about this Week 1 matchup.
Well, I do want to make sure I touch on some of our linebackers a little bit. That's okay, though. So I think in the middle, we're talking about being a young team. Our middle backer is going to be Reed Graverson. His dad was a all-conference, all-state player at quarterback at Grandville back in the 90s. Reed is a wrestler, tackles really well, really smart. And he's the guy we're going to have in the middle. And then, on the edges, we mentioned Dorn, who was a good player for us last year, and we expect him now to be a great player for us. And then Mason Albrecht, we talked about, Logan Stockwell, we talked about, Malachi Garcia Bentley, who's coming back, who played a lot last year. Jackson Zook, those are guys that are going to factor in those spots right there. But so again, we feel good about those guys as well. But looking at Grand Blanc, new coach, their coach left to take a job, I believe, in maybe North Carolina somewhere, like a boarding school. It'd be an interesting scenario. So new coach, but a guy who is familiar with that area. I believe he's a Davison alum, and also coached at Flint Kersley for some time before heading down to Alabama, where he was working as an offensive coordinator at a big time Catholic prep school down there. So really well coached team. Obviously, again, they were a semifinals last year. And I think, one of the things that stands out about that group is they do have three really good receivers. And probably, I shouldn't even say three. They probably have more than three, but they have three that have scholarship offers, Division I, Division II scholarship offers. So that's going to be a challenge for us. It's not like, you see a team who's got the one guy he's really legit. And you can roll coverage, double team, do those kind of things, and then maybe take your chances on the backside. Mm-hmm. You can't do that with this team. We're going to have to be clever. We're going to have to be fundamentally sound. But I think more than anything, we're just going to have to be aggressive. And when the ball's in the air, we have to go after it. So I think that's a challenge. They have a new quarterback coming in. Based on the scrimmage, throws really well, gets the ball in his hands to his playmakers really well. Big offensive line. They did lose a lot of that group, but a big offensive line and, kind of a plethora of running backs. It looked like they were rotating 3-4 guys back there, with their guys. So definitely going to be a big challenge, for us, to make sure we are, in the right places, have our eyes there. And then really when the ball's in the air, I think one of the biggest keys when that ball's in the air, we got to go get it, knock it down, play through the receiver and be physical. As I've told our guys, we don't want to make this a 7-on-7 game. We want to make this a physical football game with them. And I think that'll be our advantage. When you look at their defense, they have a couple big kids on the inside coming back, that we think are good players. And then they in the scrimmage, they showed a ton of what I would call good edge kids that can line up outside your tackle, outside your tight end, be physical, can get after you. can rush the passer, can play the run. So, like any time when people play us, we don't exactly know who they're going to put on field in defense, what they're going to play, because we're, a little bit different animal. But we see some good pieces there. Really across the board, they're linebackers and safeties. They got some guys returning there. So we know that it's going to be a game that's going to be, a very, very good game, a very good opener against a well-coached, very talented team. And I think for us, as I said, we got to make this game about, hopefully our offensive and defensive lines playing really well. And again, their offensive and defensive lines are very good, but that's been a strength of us. And we have to make sure that we don't want to turn this into a 7-7 game. I'm not necessarily saying we can score points with these guys. We know that, but we want to make sure that we can control the tempo of this game. We can control the pace of this game. And, like in any game, it's better if we can get up a few scores early and put some pressure on them. That's easier said than done, but that'll be that. So I do think some big keys for us though are how we think our offensive line's very good, but they're young. We think our defensive line's good again, but they're pretty young too. So how those guys handle the trenches against a really good football team is going to be critical for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I am so excited. I love these neutral-ish site games. Still have to go to the other side of the state, but east side, west side, you have kind of all the east side talent you talked about, the west side with the unique system like you guys bring to the table. I'm certainly looking forward to it. Good luck to you and the team, Coach, and thanks as always for your time with us.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, go Bulldogs, and we'll move on. Thanks for joining us here on MGN. This has been the Coach's Corner segment. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Tailgate Report. Thanks again to Grandville head coach Eric Stiegel, always so generous with his time, and very excited to get to talk to him for the first time this year and go over so many things with an interesting Grandville team, Chandler. That's the word to use, interesting, because there's so many different things coming together for the season. A lot of turnover with the Bulldogs, but a lot of things that I am excited to see this year. I think at the end of the day, we're talking a youth movement, and we're talking a speed movement. I know in almost every interview you've heard with Grandville brass and players, they're talking about speed, all the different things they're going to be able to do on both sides of the ball because of how quick this team is. Maybe the fastest team that Coach Stiegel has ever had, but some youth in there as well. A couple underclassmen, including a freshman that you mentioned in the interview, and we're going to talk about him as well that plays an interesting role. But just general thoughts on this year, really interesting team with about as many question marks as I can remember, CT. Yeah,
of course there's always going to be question marks coming into a new season. You've got some guys that have graduated and you're trying to fill those pieces, but I think you're exactly right. You've heard it everywhere, the youth and the speed. Right. And, it's kind of interesting is I've never really thought of any of the Bulldogs teams as slow necessarily, but the fact that they keep preaching speed this much makes me think, man, we really could be in for something special when you're talking about multiple position players on offense that can handle the football at the quarterback position as well, I think. So you definitely could be dangerous there. And then I think on defense as well, you're talking about speed at the skill positions there, guys that can get across the field and really be dangerous as well. And obviously, the first position group to talk about always is going to be, and it's one of the positions that the Bulldogs do have some senior leadership coming back on despite this young team, quarterback. There's some interesting talent in that room. Cash Ruff, the junior, big kid, heard Coach Stiegel talk about him, very talented, but consistently told us how great Carson Smith has looked. We know how smart he is as a 4-year player. The legs have been there. Sounds like the arm is there as well. If Carson Smith's able to take that step that it sounds like he's made, that's a first really, really critical part when you're talking about a fast team already that has a smart senior 4-year starter, essentially. Played even quarterback as a freshman quarterback. Yeah, I mean, it's the first time in a couple seasons that the Bulldogs have had a question mark at the quarterback position. Having Ian Sanders was a tremendous leader for the team, led the offense very well the last couple seasons. Of course, we'd seen Carson in game action a couple times, and he's looked fantastic. But as you mentioned, having some talent and multiple guys in that quarterback room, it was good to hear Coach Stiegel give us some insight there, and just to hear how happy he was with Carson Smith and the ability that he has on the field. I think seeing him now being that guy, knowing that he's going to be that guy, he's going to have the opportunity to lead this team, seeing what he does in that role, and really where he can lead this team. Yeah, and again, there's depth there. I mean, Cash Ruff eventually really interesting, especially, you never kind of know what might happen throughout the season, and have a guy like that that's 6'4", 205 pounds or so, really quick as well. I mean, that's interesting.
And we talked about the speed. We talked about what you have coming back on the offense. We go into the running back position. So obviously you know Tyson Mann's coming back and only able to play 5 games last year. You heard Coach STIEGEL talk about what he can do in particular as a receiving back for the Bulldogs, along with being a strong runner. Mason Albrecht returns, but then some question marks. I mean, you look at some newcomers for first, the fullback position, along with Albrecht. Talk about Kopko coming in there, and then running back, a lot or other running back position. If you're putting on the left side, likely you're talking about a guy like Figueroa. I think that's a really, really interesting piece. And then talking about the freshman Jaden Terry, who we'll get to in a moment. But talk about the rest of that group before we start getting into freshmen playing a role in this team, led by Tyson Mann and some of the other guys in terms of this mix that we're going to see at running back.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to have a lot of depth at the running back position. I think every time I love hearing Coach STIEGEL talk about, and he brings up multiple guys because you need that depth. I mean, you're 3 running backs on the field at pretty much all times.
Right.
And when you're running up and down the field like that, you're going to need depth. But it starts at the top for sure with Tyson Mann going to be the key returner coming back, just a special playmaker.
Yeah.
You heard Coach STIEGEL talk about him being one of the best in the conference potentially, and really just looking to put together that healthy season. I mean, I think we saw the flashes of it in 5 games. He scored multiple touchdowns. You saw that game-breaking ability on kick returns, really multiple different areas. But I think just looking to put that full healthy season together and really could be something special. But then, as you mentioned, Albrecht in there, another strong runner, a guy that can really get some tough yardage in there, and then a nice mix of younger backs, including Terry there as well, that could really bring some speed that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So many guys, and we're going to learn a lot, I think, the first week of the year. But at the end of the day, when you have a freshman, what it takes to bring up a freshman, in particular the running back position, and this is a video I'm going to bring up that many of you may have seen from this past spring. But Jaden Terry, of course, of the Cam Terry and the Terry family lineage, which going back to their father as well, just all stud running backs. Their dad played at Ferris State. Of course, Cam at Davenport now, and we know what Cam was. I mean, it's pretty simple. I don't have to talk about him. But, like, this is a kid, for one, he's big. You're talking to a kid that as a freshman is already starting to touch the almost 180-pound marker. I mean, that's – when I was a freshman, I was like 100 pounds. But, like, this is a kid. This is obviously 8th grade track, 100-yard dash. I mean, and it's easy to find who he is. But, like, you're talking breakaway, pull-away speed, and he is so much bigger than all these guys. And these are track guys all around him. And that, to me, is a video that shows, like, yeah, he's got to develop those running back skills. And I know Coach STIEGEL, talked about kind of some of the things he said to him. It's the first time you're not just by far the best guy in the field, and they're talking about playing him on both sides of the ball. This is where I'll editorialize a little bit. I would think by the time we get to the end of week 1, week 2, we're going to see this kid make a special play or two, the same way his brother did. If you remember, Cam got kind of bottled up the first game of the year at the Big House and then broke free. Had what? Was that the game he had 4 touchdowns and like 300 yards against Forest Hills Central, the second game of his sophomore year? I think it'll be similar for Jaden. Even if week 1 you see Grandville, great team up front, maybe bottle him. I think maybe Byron Center he breaks out. And I think by the 3rd, 4th game of the year, we're talking about this as a guy that in that rotation is in more than out and plays a big role, especially a role that he might be more of a running back than just kind of straight ahead fullback, even possibly right away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think definitely the coaching staff possibly to try to ease him into it a little bit. You don't want to, put too much weight on his shoulders jumping right in. But I think definitely we both know and have seen that the talent is there. It's just a matter of time. So I think we'll see him a little bit week 1 for sure. We'll see how much of an impact he has on the game. But I think, speed like that is going to play.
Right. Coach STIEGEL says he's the fastest guy on the team right now, quite possibly.
Yeah, exactly. In an offense like that, that's going to create some seams for him to run through where he's going and he's running down the field. You're going to see that speed, and that's definitely something that's going to help this offense out. It's going to be obviously the development of what do you do in games when teams are bottling you up, and what else can you impact in the game. But just that ability right there alone says enough.
Yeah, and I don't want to discount Junie Figueroa either, the other back. I've seen some of the highlights of this kid. He's a strong runner. He had in his highlight tape you learned from last year, he's has a really good spin move, like a very, very well polished, developed spin move. He has some power, he has some speed. He's just one of those nice balance backs that you really like to have as well. And then you talk about Albrecht Kopko, maybe more of straight line speed. We saw Albrecht do it a year ago at fullback. Tyson Mann. I like the mix, man. I really, really like what they bring to the table across the board at that running back group.
I agree with you. I think they've got a nice balance. I think throughout the last couple seasons, we've seen the Bulldogs mix and match some running backs back there and get that nice complement to each other, where you got three guys in that backfield that each can do each their own thing, individually, but also as a unit that plays off one another. And so you've got the strength in the middle, you've got the speed on the outside, a guy you can flank out potentially as a wide out to catch some passes. You've got the counter plays there. I mean, just really you can see the system setting up and those players filling those roles as the season goes along, and then now those roles are opening up again.
Right, you think back to 2 years ago when they ran a lot of double wing along with the T formations. I think that's something that we might see come in the fold. Let's talk about in general. You kind of mentioned the system setting up, and I know I heard in one of the other interviews that Coach Stiegel did earlier where he kind of talked about, we might be able to do some different things. I think you look at this offense, and you look at how deep they can go and how fast they are. I'm not saying they're going to run quite that system because it's not the way that they've relayed messages and done it before. I look to last year's Unity Christian team. Maybe we obviously knew them well as a team that provides a little bit of a blueprint of how a speed T team can go, going up tempo, keeping the defense on the back foot, so forth. I think no one will ever be that offense, especially against D1 competition. Not to discount what Unity did, because they have the D4. They were that talent, the same talent at their level, but. Like, there's a blueprint, I think, there to show some of the ways they might be able to do things differently than the traditional grind-it-out slow 4 yards at a time Grandville T offense that you expect out of a T when you have this kind of speed and type of breakout ability.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think our eyes were both opened a little bit last year watching that. Coming from the Grandville T, which has been fantastic, scoring points. It's been a great offense. But then going to the Unity Christian T last year and the way that they ran and the athletic ability that they have, I definitely think there is a blueprint there that it doesn't have to be all the time. I think in the OK Red especially, you need those games where you're just grinding it out. And I think, not to take any shots at Unity, but maybe they could have used a little bit more of that grinded out there in the state championship game. But I think that's still something that this T is going to need, and just controlling the football when you're talking about games against Rockford and Caledonia. But I think definitely having that element of being able to mix in that speed up there, whether it's up tempo or just going at a little bit more of a brisk pace to keep that defense off balance. And
an interesting mix of guys at offensive line this year as well. I mean, you're moving guys, of course, Medeiros going to lock things down on the right side, but all new starters for the most part. A couple guys that cycled in a little bit, but besides that, you're mixing everyone. Of course, the big news, I think, that was kind of broken, or not necessarily broken, but whatever that Coach Steele talked about, is that they're going to move McPherson to the defensive side of the ball primarily. That means, obviously, they, like what J.J. Bugard brings to the table at center, and that they feel comfortable enough taking, I mean, you normally like experience at the center position. You have a guy that started every game at center, and you feel comfortable enough to move him to defense. I think that says good things about Bugard, but it's an offensive line that is new. So maybe being able to bring something new and give him wrinkles could definitely help. And that moves into the defensive side of the ball, because that's where it's kind of split in two. When you look at the secondary, you're talking a team that we know who's playing where. I mean, almost everyone returns. Up front, it's all about rotations. Let's start up front. I mean, you talk about the front seven. You got a guy like Aiden Doran, of course, that's going to play a huge role in that very varied role. We've seen it the last few years. Ever since this new defensive system under DC KJ Landis came in, they kind of have this one. You can almost look at it as the old Viper position that Michigan used to play a guy like Jabril Peppers in, where you got some coming off the edge, some outside linebacker, some even middle linebacker, some nickel corner as well. Doran plays that role. Besides that, complete new rotation for the most part on the defensive line. New guys getting broken in at linebacker. Reed Graverson, the sophomore, going to lead the middle of the defense. That's going to be the place to watch, is what the Bulldogs are able to do in that front seven. We know how much they mix it up. They'll be able to find the right mix, but you got a lot of young guys and a lot of new guys to try to mix in.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think what helps, and I think Coach Steele talked about this too, is that they've throughout the last couple seasons with that mixed defense and the varied looks, they've had the ability to rotate guys in, and so there's a lot of guys that maybe weren't starters the last couple seasons, but they've seen the field. Sometimes teams get locked into having their starting 11 on defense, and they don't really rotate guys in. But when you've got this multiple looks, you got guys filling multiple different positions, then of course size and position are going to change throughout the course of the season and from year to year when you've got juniors coming back as seniors. So, I mean, it's nice that those guys have seen the field, and so it's not brand new stepping onto the field for the first time. It's now figuring out, what position can you play, what role can you fill in this defense, and it's one that you have to trust Coach Landis with what he's been able to do and his adjustments, the way he's made that defense work.
And, I mean, the secondary, though, we do know the answers there. I mean, you're talking about a guy like Hungerford returning, Carson Smith's still going to play some out there. A couple other young guys talk about Cash Ruff, fitting in some other pieces like Coach Stiegel talked about. But for the most part, got some experience out there, and that's really, really good that you're going to be able to lead the way out there with guys that know what they're doing. I know Coach talked about Avon Cott as a guy he really liked that's going to play more of the strong safety role, likely alongside Carson Smith. So I think you have a good mix of young guys that they trust and played really well at JV with experienced guys there that are really sound. I mean, you talk about Smith, talk about Hungerford, very sound guys. They aren't always the most over-aggressive, making big flashy plays. Very sound. That's what you want in your secondary.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you need some high IQ guys back there that understand what the opposing team's trying to throw at them, and then can communicate that in the defensive backfield. And so when you've got guys that have been there, guys that play the quarterback position on the offensive side, and then guys that you've trusted throughout the last couple seasons that can play in that back end of the defense, can really hold things tight there. You like to have a strength, when it's on your defense. So when you're not bringing a bunch of guys back, it's not just completely revamping the defense. You've got that strong suit, so you can kind of lean on those guys early in the season as you're trying to figure some other things out, and to know that that's going to be a strength with a lot of returners.
So it all starts Thursday, 3:15 p.m. We're on the air. Early start with that game from Flint versus Grand Blanc. I mean, it's as tough of a start as you could possibly imagine. Grand Blanc, a top 5 team in the state, the team that knocked Rockford out of the playoffs last year. But I will say this much, CT. They're breaking a new quarterback. They're breaking in a lot of new guys all over the place, but you're talking about 3-4 guys that are, as Coach Stiegel talked about, committed guys at receiver. Especially the top guy, I think, is going to Grand Valley. Very, very talented team. It's going to test that secondary. It's going to test up front. The offense is going to get a workout early on. I mean, it's a neutral-ish site game. I think I called it. Really isn't a neutral site game because they're playing pretty darn close to Grand Blake's neck of the woods out there in Flint. So, I mean, you put it all together, it's a really, really tough Week 1 matchup. It's not, and of course, no one on Grandville is going to talk about moral victories, and we don't really, I mean, it's the first week of the year, so it's tough to handicap it, but it's one of those matchups where you're definitely going to have to execute for the entirety of the football game if you're the Bulldogs.
Yeah, Grand Blanc has got those guys that can beat you. All it takes is one play, and then they're down the field, and then can totally open a game completely wide open. And you talked about it, the game plan coming in is pretty obvious. It's the Bulldogs going to try to outmuscle them. I mean, if they're going to try to play that 7-on-7 style, Grand Blanc's definitely going to be comfortable doing that. They've got the playmakers, those guys that are ready for the next level. So if they're going to get into a game like that, it's going to be tough. And so it's tough early on in the season, but I mean, the Bulldogs, it's something they've kind of gotten used to. We talked about it in the intro. They've played tough opponents early in the season. They kind of know, what they need to do in order to get prepared for something like this. And so another great test for them to try to execute that early on.
Dogs go out and win this game, and you're talking huge momentum. You're talking the kind of boost that really could launch a season with a young team. That's why it's important. And I'm not counting them out that we see them surprise. Like, I think the ingredients are still there. Grand Blanc doesn't see the T as much as some other West Side teams may normally see the T. The Grandville defense can do so many things to confuse you and give different looks, and I think they may be able to find an interception or two if Grand Blanc's trying to really air it out quite a bit. I don't know. Put that all together, I think most experts are going to be on Grand Blanc, and for good reason. You're talking a top 5 team in the state, but man, I wouldn't count the Bulldogs out yet. I really think it's going to be a really fascinating game. I think it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game, too, and I think it's going to be one of those games that's going to be won based on an interception or two, where who makes the fewest mistakes and who turns the ball over the least.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there as well. I think the Grand Blanc team is definitely had a tremendous season last year, and I think they've still got a lot of those playmakers, but I agree with you. A new head coach as well as a new quarterback there. I mean, there's a good chance it's a seamless transition. You never know, but at the same time, it's a brand new for them as well, and so you catch them trying to push things a little bit down the field, and you got a defense that kind of has been there and played well together in the past, that they can make some adjustments down the way, and that's all it takes. I think it's definitely going to be a close game. As you said, 2 teams last year at least that scored a ton of points, and I think early on in the season when you're talking about defenses, sometimes it takes a little while to get up to speed. I think we're definitely looking at a high-scoring game.
Absolutely. All right, Thursday, 3:15 p.m., MichiganSportsRadio.com/MGN or MichiganGameNight.com. We'll probably simulcast through Twitter and stuff like we normally do, so you know how to find us at this point in time. We'll be on there with our first match of the year, and I cannot wait to get to it. We'll step aside. We'll come right back. We got some preseason rankings, preseason awards to get to. We'll be right back here on Game Night.
The sinister cries haunted Mary through the night. Dawn neared, and still the voice tormented her. She ran towards the safety of her car, flung open the door, and a coyote had somehow gotten locked inside. But the damaged interior was covered thanks to Farmers Insurance. Coyote Carpool, August 1st, 2015. Talk to a farmer's agent. We know a thing or two because we've seen a thing or two.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Contact the Scott Bates Agency today, 616-531-3441. A proud supporter of MichiganGameNight.com.
Can you identify your number one personal trait? The thing that you do better than most others? If not, this may be a good time to think this through. If you're really good at writing, then why use the phone? If you're great on the phone, why use email? If you have exceptional human relation skills, why sit back and let others lead? I'm Randy Hansen, president of Centennial Securities Company. Playing to our strengths is something we do very well at Centennial. And if you're already a customer, you know what I mean. If not, isn't it about time?
Member SIPC and FINRA.
And welcome back to Game Night and Tailgate Report. Nate and Chandler with you, and now we get to have some fun. Now we get to really take a look at this 2022 season. We can look back and see how dumb or on the mark we were at the end. We're going to go through some of our awards, rankings, predictions, so on and so forth for this year. So kind of three different segments within one segment. First, we're going to rank 8 through 1. Our thoughts on the OK Red, because that's primarily where we'll obviously be covering this year with the Bulldogs. And then we, after that, we'll get into our first edition of the OK Power 6. You remember that? We just ranked the top team in each of the OK conference subdivisions. This one is essentially just a preseason prediction edition. And, then we will get into our, we have a couple preseason, just basic awards, Team of the Year, Coach of the Year, and Player of the Year from the West Michigan area. So without further ado, let's get going. Let's start with our OK Red prediction. CT will go 8 through 6 to start. I'll give out my 3. You can give out yours. We'll rotate back and forth. So I've got Grand Haven at the bottom. I got Jenison 7. I got West Ottawa 6. I feel like maybe with a bit of a change, it's going to be probably pretty close everywhere. I think for most, Grand Haven's going to be at the bottom or right there about. And then I've got West Ottawa with a boost over Jenison because I think they're going to find a game or two with mostly with the stadium and probably in Week 9 in particular.
Yeah, I've got the exact same 3 teams, just a little bit flip-flopped in the order. Okay. I've got West Ottawa at the bottom. I think West Ottawa, could steal a game here and there. I believe they're still on a losing streak, if I'm not mistaken.
They haven't won for 3 years.
Okay, I do think they get a win at some point this year, but for right now I'm going to keep them at the bottom. I think the new stadium definitely has some momentum going there, but I'm going to keep them at 8 for now. I've got Grand Haven at 7. I agree with you. I think it's pretty much between Grand Haven and West Ottawa. I have a hard time finding a huge difference there if you want to argue with me there. But I've got Jenison as well at 6.
And, I had a tough time with Jenison because I could actually see Jenison even maybe up to 5 because that's one of the best coaching staffs. I mean, top to bottom, Coach Zeitman has spent time at the NCAA D1 level, spent a lot of time at Ferris State with Coach Anise as well. So that's a team that really runs the system. They run one of my favorite systems. Their version of the ski gun, I think, is really fun. And if they're able to get the talent, mostly if they're able to get the size up front to kind of match what they want to do, losing Caleb Dean's huge, though. I mean, Dean was the guy that could kind of make that thing move and why they were close in a lot of games. It'll be interesting how they're able to replenish from that 5 through 3. I'll just go again on the rotation. So I do have East Kentwood 5. I have Grandville 4. And here's probably the most surprising one for anyone. I got Rockford 3. So East Kentwood, one of these years it's going to have to click for East Kentwood. I know they're bringing in, I think they have a new offensive coordinator, Casey Joppy, in his second season now as a junior at quarterback. I think that's going to be big. They're always going to have the size up front. Raza Townsend is a Western Michigan commit. They have the skill outside. East Kentwood. I got Grandville 4. Honestly, 4 through 1 I think can be in a lot of different directions. We talk about that every year. But the main thing people are going to talk about is Rockford. And mostly I have Rockford 3 because I think the 2 teams that are above them, and I'll talk about what order they're in, I think the 2 teams above them are going to beat them this year. And I go off that what happened when they were close against Caledonia. I'm really high on Hudsonville as well this year for a couple reasons we'll get into. So that's probably going to be my main one that I'll get roasted for online, is I do have Rockford 3.
Yeah, it's a bit surprising. I'm not quite with you there. I've got as well East Kentwood at 5. I went Hudsonville at 4.
Oh, okay. We're going to be way off.
We have slight disagreement there. I think Hudsonville is a very good team, and I can kind of explain this here in a little bit more detail, but I've got Caledonia at 3.
Okay.
So for me, I kind of had the conference broken up into 3 subsections is kind of what I had. The top 4, I think we both agree that those are the teams that could be right there for the conference. all probably looking to make the playoffs and can be right there. And then for me, it was Jenison, East Kentwood kind of in the middle, where if they put things together, they can be at the top of the conference. Playoffs aren't out of the question. I think East Kentwood may be slightly closer there as I had them in my rankings. I agree with you. I think the talent, again, is just, can they put it together? But and then for me, it was Grand Haven and West Ottawa at the bottom. But I think these top 4 teams, what we're about to discuss here, really, there's an argument to be made for pretty much anyone in any order. And until we see them play head-to-head, it's going to be tough.
See how smooth that was, folks? That's a true professional. How I was able to fix that situation right there. All right, top 2. So we know who's left for each of us then. You're going to make our local fan base pretty happy with some of what you have left. I'm not making them quite as happy. So I have Caledonia 2. I have Hudsonville 1. So let me explain, because I know you've got Hudsonville down at 4. I believe when you look at Hudsonville, they're going to be able to replenish up front. What's harder, and I do like their system. I like that power spread system that Coach Sandy and they bring to the table. For me, the thing is they bring back all of the skill guys. Carr's back again at quarterback. Getting ready for the Carr battle, week 1, and they play Saline again. They got Carr at quarterback. You've got most of all the receivers back. Raritan going to Navy, D1 commit at receiver. I don't know what position is he going to play there. Then is he going to be a wing, or I don't know what they're going to move.
It's a good question.
But you have him there. You then have, I guess Raritan was one that they played Wildcat quarterback with against Grandville last year.
That's right.
So you have Raritan, Bain, I believe, back also at running back. So you have all those pieces back at the skill position. They were already so close in every game. They almost won their first 2. They have as tough as a schedule as anyone. That's the issue. I think that's what you're going to probably talk about a little bit, or we'll go in. But like, they were so close last year. They bring the pieces back. You have a quarterback coming back. You have a coaching staff I like there. So yes, that's why I do have Caledonia beating Rockford. That's the difference I have right there. So that's where I'm going. I do think Hudsonville turns it around from 4 and 5. I don't know what the record is, but I do think they finished first in the OK Red.
Okay, I mean, I'm hearing you on Hudsonville, and I agree. I think they'll be better than last year. I think the main argument that I've heard for Hudsonville is that they lost so many close games last season, and I mean, that's tough when you're right there in that many games, and they feel like they could have had that season go differently. And I agree. I think they pick up a game here and there. I mean, it's a lot of the same schedule. I mean, when you're talking about difficult opponents, obviously the OK Red.
Pretty much same schedule. Yeah.
And when you're talking about the OK Red, especially, and then the Saline to open up the season as well. There, I mean, I'm not saying the season goes exactly as it did last year. I still see them as a playoff team, and I think I don't think you're crazy for putting them at the top of the OK Red. But for me, I'm just gonna keep them at that 4th position. But.
Yeah, and before I get to that's so my little fun fact on Hudsonville, there's a good chance they win the conference, but might have a worse record than the team that finishes immediately behind them, or even the 2 teams that finish immediately behind them. So I will note that as my extra little prediction. All right, you got Grandville, you got Rockford left. I think I know what order they're in.
Yep, no, I've got Grandville at 2 and Rockford at 1. I think.
Boy, you're just going out on a limb.
Yeah, no, I really am. But,
check down Chandler.
Yeah, hey, I'm trying to make these predictions to be right at the end of the day, right? So, no, I don't know. I mean, I just have to see somebody knock Rockford off before I can take them off from the top spot.
I mean that's fair.
I know.
I'm just hoping.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people are, but I think there's questions at the quarterback position for Rockford as well. But I think the coaching staff there have got them ready to go. And
I don't know. They feel really good about what they got. I mean, that's the thing. So for me, not to cut you off, sorry, but like my thing is, like I don't know how good last year. It was a very good team, obviously. I don't know if the team was as good as what Zach Ahern made them. I think Zach Ahern is one. I mean, I felt he should have been in the running for Mr. Football. I mean, Moore got it because of the name recognition and whatever. Like, I really felt Ahern should have been there for what he did, kind of elevating, lifting that team. And I'm interested because it's a somewhat similar-ish team coming back. I'm curious if they're going to be able to match, kind of go back to more of a traditional Rockford thing, have the whole team around. I mean they're gonna win. I mean, like I don't want to say I'm wrong, but like there's a reason why it's the safe bet. I mean, they regenerate like crazy. They have talent, and the main thing is that they are really confident about the guys that they have filling holes, and that's the concerning part is when the coaching staffs are really happy about Mac Vandenhout is the quarterback filling Hearns' role. They feel really good about him. That probably tells you something.
Yeah, I mean, they've got confidence in him, and so, yeah, I expect them to. I don't know if an undefeated season's in the cards again. I won't go out there.
I don't think I'd go there at all.
Just by talking with the top 4 teams, I think any one of them, could knock Rockford off, and so I don't think I won't predict an undefeated season, but it's just hard to pick against them. I do.
And they play Mona Shores right at the start of the year too.
Yep, I think we'll get a good idea after that game as well. But I do think Grandville, as we talked about at length early on, has got a tough non-conference schedule. But I think when you're talking about in-conference, I still kind of like what they bring to the table. I think Caledonia also going to be very good. I know a lot of people very high on Caledonia, and I think again a team that could beat Rockford, but just until they do it, I'm going to stick with the Rams at 1.
All right, so Rockford, Hudsonville, your predictions. He goes down the line. I think what 90% of people would probably say. I go for a little bit of the wild card, but just because of some of what I saw last year and what I think. And also my prediction, therefore, comes from I think it's going to be a mess. I think that's the one thing I will say. I think you're talking 2-3 losses for these teams at the top of the conference, and it's a real mess. And that'll roll right into our OK Power 6 preseason rankings. So we probably don't have to talk about the OK Red, right? I think we just gave it. We have Hudson, we have Rockford as our preseason predictions in the OK Red. So there's the first one quickly gone. OK Green. I'm going to let you start, and I'm going to say I'm actually going to say something different than what I wrote down.
Okay, I'm making changes on the fly here. All right, well, I'll lead it off. I've got Muskegon. I don't think that's a crazy pick again. I get crazy looks here for picking the right teams. I don't know.
That's who I have too. So I had Mona Shores originally because I said they're hungry, they want to get back to Ford Field. But you kind of look across the board. This is an up year in talent for Muskegon. When Muskegon has an up year in talent, don't bet against them. Put them 1 overall in the area your whole year.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I don't want to spoil my picks for later, but I think we're talking one of the best teams, potential state championship run again. So,
absolutely. Okay, White. For me, this is another spot. I'm mostly today just trying to have a little bit of fun and picking some wild card ones. Forest Hill Central, I think for most has kind of evolved as the front runner. I'm going back to something we saw last year in the playoffs with. And again, this is tough because you've got teams from so many different levels and divisions in this, and they're fighting an uphill battle because of this. Young team that played Unity until Unity eventually lost, but played Unity the best and scored the most against the defense is Grand Rapids Christian. New coaching staff getting their footing now. Good talent. Yeah, they graduated some guys, but they had some sophomores, juniors I really like. A little bit of a dark horse. I got Grand Rapids. I think it's same as the OK Red, going to be a dog fight. I like Byron Center, too, as a potential team to sneak in there. I got Grand Rapids Christian. I'm blinded by how much I liked them versus Unity last year with a young team.
Yeah, I don't hate that pick. I mean, 4 losses for them last year, 2 to Unity. So I think
bingo.
I don't hate that pick. I'm going to go different just because. But I mean, Forest Hill Central was my pick. You probably already knew that. But Byron Center was my team last year, and
they were. That's right.
So I kind of feel like
see them this year.
Yeah, I know. I kind of feel like I have to go back with the Bulldogs here. I picked Forest Hill Central just because they had a little not easier non-conference schedule versus the Bulldogs, as we talked about. Going to be playing Grandville, maybe a more difficult start to the season, and not sure what impact that has on the rest of the year. Forest Hill Central was my pick, but I think the Bulldogs are also going to be right there.
Yeah. No, I mean, I like that. Yeah, I mean, again, FHC, kind of the chalk pick for me, but that's a team. They're essentially replenishing the amount of starters Unity is replenishing. You're talking like 20-ish positions that they're going to have like new turnover on. So that's the only question. But they're so well coached over there too. We've seen them before, and no, that's a good pick for a reason. And again, you've got a D2 team, and I've got a D4 team, so you have to factor that in as well. Okay, Gold. I have Grand Rapids Catholic Central. I'm assuming you do too.
Yeah, definitely. Not gonna fight you on that one.
Yeah, I mean, South Christian's good this year, but I mean, you're talking a team that's in D5 that has maybe year in, year out the best talent top to bottom of any team in the area. And, they lost some pieces. You lose a pair of quarterbacks that played incredibly well for you last year, but I have no doubts. You're losing a defensive end, linebacker, safety combo that's going to Notre Dame, but they're gonna be fine. They'll replenish. They'll win this conference again. They'll go undefeated again. They'll win the state championship again. nothing else to say. OK Blue. This is an interesting one for me because there hasn't been much discussion to be had here the last couple years. But the team that made it no discussion the last couple years has just lost literally everybody. And not just that. You know, I'm a big fan of Unity. I love what they do. Really came to like their crowd and their support as well. That's a program crushing loss. There's no other way to and it's actually probably good they turn over that entire roster because that is as tough of a loss as you can imagine. And there are some good teams here. Coopersville's very good defensively. Unity is going to still be fine at the top of things. I am going to go with the pick that no one else is really making, I don't think, too much when it's all said and done. The best player, maybe in the area, plays running back for West Catholic. That's Tim Kloska. I've got West Catholic. I think it's going to come down to, I think they run the table pretty much. Unity runs the table. And I think West Catholic wins that game this year because of the game breaker Kloska. And that's another little bit of that's back-to-back kind of, not quite back-to-back, but that's a couple off the board maybe ones. But I think it's open, and I don't know how I don't know how Unity's going to restock. I mean, because even the second-string running backs have graduated. So, they'll do it to some extent. They have for 20 years, but the best player, maybe in the area, a D1 talent, plays running back at a D4, D5 conference. And that's why I think West Catholic is going to just have the edge.
Yeah, see, I'm actually with you here. I've got
Really?
West Catholic
Okay,
as
look
well.
at this.
Yeah, we didn't plan that.
No.
I'm hearing what you're saying. I agree. I think Unity is 20 starters, I believe, that they're replacing. As you mentioned, multiple depth players there as well. So, I mean, you're not just talking about a couple guys at the top. You're talking about pretty much the whole team. And so, if there's a system in the area that's built to replenish, I think Unity's got it in place. Yep. And so I think still going to be a great team there in Hudsonville. But when you're talking about the dominance that they've had for the last couple seasons and the way they've ran teams over, it remains to be seen if they're going to be back to that exact level. And so I think there is a window there for a team like West Catholic, who has that top talent, who has been right there for now to be a little bit closer to being competitive at the top of the conference.
I'll put a caveat, whatever, on it for myself. Easy for me to say. I will be 0% surprised, maybe 1% surprised, because I did pick it the other way, if Unity still runs the table, kills everyone, goes on a deep playoff run. If Mitch Tibby comes in and just looks terrific at quarterback and fills right in and the other backs are there. But I will say, again, you're talking a D3, D4, D5 conference, and maybe, don't want to give away later picks, I think the best player in the area at his position for sure at least plays there. And that's a huge X factor. We're talking kind of that levels of schools and talent, I think. So, OK Silver. This is one we had a tough time with last year going into the year, and I'm essentially just going to take what we learned last year, carry it through. Comstock Park ran the table till they got put in the District of Doom last year and lost. I'm going to say they bring back the coaching staff again. A little bit of a kind of something to rally around. Of course, their basketball coach passed away the other week. Some of those guys crossed over from those teams as well. So maybe a rallying point for them as well. I got Comstock Park in the silver.
Yeah, I can't argue too much with that other than I did have Sparta, I believe.
Okay.
A team that's been competitive in that conference and is growing quite a bit. It's again, this one's a toss-up for me. I think there's three teams at the top.
At least three. You can maybe even argue
four. Yeah, I agree. I think between Sparta, Comstock Park, Hopkins, Belding as well.
Belding's in there for sure, I think.
I mean, lots of teams that are very close. I don't think this is going to be a runaway conference, but I just went with Sparta.
All right, there you go. We'll see how that all winds up as we go through this season. All right, ready for some preseason awards to wrap things up. Let's start with the team of the year. I think we maybe have each at some points alluded to this. I'll let you start. Who's going to be the team of the year in West Michigan?
Yeah, I've got Muskegon. I talked about it earlier. I think, when they've got talent like this, we've seen them do it in the past. They can win state championships. I think they're on that pace once again. I think they're lined up pretty well if things go somewhat similar to what we've seen in the past and what they're looking like they could be. It could be a really special team for the Big Reds.
I made fun of you for going chalk. I'm going to pick the team that's going to win their 20th straight state championship this year. I have Grand Rapids Catholic Central as the team of the year. Sorry. But, I think it's a year where I like Muskegon too as a standout. I don't think there's going to be many teams that really elevate themselves. We just talked about all these conferences and how mixed up we think it's going to be. I think last year was a year where you had Unity, you had Rockford, you had Comstock Park went unbeaten. You know, you had all these teams that just ran away from start to finish. And I don't think we're going to see that this year, quite honestly. So for that reason, I'm just going to go with the team that I feel the safest about not coming close to throwing something away, and that's going to be Grand Rapids Catholic Central. Now watch, they're going to get tripped up by South Christian and a whole bunch of other. They play at the Big House week 1. We'll see how that goes. So we'll see, but that is my team of the year, and I think Muskegon's in the same category. Just frankly, if we're playing a semantics game, they have a tougher road still. They're in a,
for sure.
You know, that's mostly where it's a safer pick for me. So we'll flip the table. Coach of the year. I'll start because I probably have a little bit of the surprise pick to some extent, but it has to go back to, if I'm predicting Hudsonville from going from 4-5 to winning the OK Red, gotta be Brett Sandy, because I think Coach Sandy, if he does bring that team from one game under 500 to winning the OK Red, the toughest conference, maybe for sure in the area, maybe in the state of Michigan, I think that's just kind of logically where I'm gonna have to, if I'm gonna stay along the lines, where I'm gonna have to go with it. So I do have Coach Sandy winning my preseason Coach of the Year award.
That makes sense to me. I kind of did the opposite strategy. I hedged myself a little bit here. So for Coach of the Year, I picked Derek Pennington from Caledonia. And I, of course, picked Caledonia third in the OK Red. And so the hedge here is that Caledonia turns out probably winning the OK Red and then going on a playoff run as well, which we saw last year. No, once they got into the postseason, they really dominated some teams, and so I think I do expect them to be very good once again. Take another step forward in his second year there. But I
can't even tell everyone. I mean, for those of you, if you know Chandler, this is the most Chandler thing I've ever heard. So he first goes chalk, picks Rockford, and now we're going to double down with a different award, and we're going to be able to counter that, and we're going to hedge that with the other chalk pick. So we are completely safe on the OK Red, and he's right regardless. And he's going to tell you at the end of the year how smart and how right he was. Because when Rockford's won, he's going to tell us why Rockford won. And then when, Caledonia will lose only one game to Rockford, he'll still say both are fine, which is definitely going to likely happen, and then he's going to be fine. So I thank you for always staying true to yourself in everything you do. Jeez. Player of the Year. I have Tim Kloska. I just talked about why I thought it would be Tim Kloska. I think he is the best player in the area. He plays on a D4 school. I think he's going to put up bonkers numbers this year. I mean, we're talking he's going to score 3 touchdowns a game. This kid's going to run for 300 yards a game. That's what I got. Yeah, I don't know how else to put it. Really, I think Kloska's the guy at this Player of the Year award.
Yeah, he sniped me. I've got Kloska as well. 2,267 yards. I'll just list some stats because you pretty much covered everything. So 2,267 yards last year, 29 touchdowns. A new coaching staff there, and the talk of trying to be a little bit more balanced. But I think when you've got a talent like that in a conference like that,
to him.
yeah, maybe that's what they meant. I didn't interpret that way,
right.
But yeah,
we're gonna throw some screens too.
Yeah, no, I mean when you've got a talent like that, you're going to use it. And in a conference that's given up some big yardage on the ground in the last couple of years as well, I think there's a huge opportunity for him to dominate.
All right, that'll do it. I'm ready for football. How about you?
Can't wait.
Thursday, 3:15 p.m. Atwood Stadium, one of the most historic, I think it's just about the oldest stadium outside, maybe just Michigan Stadium in Michigan. Really, really cool venue, and it's an incredible game. Grandville, Grand Blanc is how we start out our season with Grandville Byron Center, and you can stay tuned, all that coming up as well. The home games, again, we're going to be working with Grandville High School to put out a video stream. We'll do our enhanced radio on the road games. We'll see if there might be some more video stuff we can do based on where we are coming up, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel too much. I like where we're at with a lot of our coverage right now, and we'll work some things in. I mean, like I said, we've got crowd mics this year. We're going to be able to use. We're going to be able to go mics for the open, so we don't have to wear headsets and whatever during the opens and so forth, and we'll see the rest of what we can do. Any last words?
No, I'm excited. Thursday night, finally get the season kicked off.
I think he has put it well. He is Chandler Timmer. I am Nate Dreyer. This is Michigan Game Night. This is the MGN Football Tailgate Report. And this is football on Michigan Game Night. Are you ready? I'm ready. We'll see you all Thursday night.